Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webcast on assessing the effectiveness of your municipal stormwater program. This webcast is sponsored by EPA's Office of Wastewater Management. My name is John Costco with Tetra Tech, and I will moderate today's session. Thanks for joining us. We'll get started in a few moments. While we wait for others to join, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. The materials in this webcast have been reviewed by EPA staff for technical accuracy. However, the views of the speakers and the speakers' organizations are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the EPA. Mention of any commercial enterprise, product, or publication does not mean that EPA endorses them. For those of you new to EPA Stormwater Webcast, I want to briefly summarize some of the features of the webcast. First, if you have any technical difficulties, you can call 800-833-2812 or click the Help button to receive technical support from ON24. Again, that technical support number is 800-833-2812. You may also use the Ask a Question area to post any technical issues you're experiencing. Please include a telephone number where you can be reached, and we will help you troubleshoot your problem. We will have several question and answer sessions during today's webcast. To ask a question, simply type your question in the text box located in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. Then click on the Submit Question button. You don't need to wait until the question and answer period to submit your question. In fact, we do encourage you to submit your questions early. We will try to answer as many questions as possible. Due to the high number of participants, however, all questions will not be answered. However, today's speaker's contact information is provided on your screen should you have any questions following the webcast. There will also be several occasions where our presenters will ask you questions. These poll questions will appear in your slide window. Please submit your answers in that same window and click Submit. Do not put your answer in the Ask a Question box. If you'd like to see closed captioning, click on the Closed Captioning button on the lower left-hand corner of your screen. And at the end of the webcast, you'll be asked to complete an evaluation survey. The survey will appear in a pop-up window, so please turn off your pop-up blocker at this time. Also, EPA offers the ability to receive certificates for those who view the live webcast. In order to receive this certificate, you need to click on the Download Certificate button to view and print your certificate. For sites with more than one participant, the last slide was a blank certificate form that you can fill in for each person at your site. You must print the certificate after this webcast. It will not be mailed to you. As a reminder, this webcast will be archived indefinitely, so you can access it after today's live presentation on the EPA's Stormwater website. The archived presentation will be posted within a couple of weeks on EPA's website. Now we're ready to kick off this session. Today's speakers are Karen Ashby and Betsy Elzufon of Larry Walker Associates and Nikos Singelis of EPA. Nikos is a senior program analyst with EPA's MPDS Stormwater Program and has been with EPA's Stormwater Program for the last 8 years, working on many different projects to help Phase 2 communities implement this challenging program. He co-authored EPA guidance on developing your stormwater pollution plan, a guide for construction sites, led the development of EPA's Urban BMP Performance Tool, which was just released in January and was the subject of a recent webcast. And he's a speaker across the country on many various stormwater topics, including at the most recent StormCon and International Erosion Control Association conferences. Karen Ashby is an associate with Larry Walker Associates and has been responsible for overseeing and assisting with Larry Walker's work in the stormwater and watershed management areas, including the development, implementation, and effectiveness assessments of municipal stormwater management programs. Karen's skills include development of tools and guidance materials, the development and implementation of several introductory and advanced training modules, including general program overview and management, train the trainer business modules, and inspection procedures and techniques, assistance with annual reporting, and development of program effectiveness assessments. Karen is certified as a professional in stormwater quality from CPSC and has been an active member of the California Stormwater Quality Association since 1999, as well as a board of director member, vice chair, and chair. Betsy Elzufon is an associate also at Larry Walker Associates. As manager, conducted most of Larry Walker's pollution prevention projects. Betsy's worked extensively in the area of major program effectiveness for pollution prevention and stormwater programs. Effectiveness measurement projects have ranged from assisting individual municipalities to nationwide projects. She has also assisted several municipalities in evaluating and updating various elements of their pretreatment programs. Now I'd like to turn it over to Nikos, who will discuss and summarize some of the topics we're going to be covering today.
Thank you, John. This is Nikos Singelis with EPA's Office of Wastewater Management, and I'm glad to be here for our third webcast this year. And welcome to Karen and Betsy, who you will be hearing from extensively in about a half hour. I'm going to take this first part of the session with some help from John, and we're going to go through some of the planning and priority setting elements for MS4s, and as well as what we see as some of the key elements that basically should be in an MS4 program at this point. And then we're going to launch into a discussion, which is really the focus of today's webcast, of the California Stormwater Quality Association. Very excellent guidance called Municipal Stormwater Program Effectiveness Assessment Guidance, which we in EPA have used to help us structure not only this webcast, but a lot of other things. And so we'll hear more about that. And then finally, we're going to take, at the end, we're going to look at the last minimum measure, municipal operations or good housekeeping, and we're going to show you kind of step by step how that would work through a good, what we could consider a good program effectiveness assessment. And so I just wanted to set the tone a little bit here, too, because this is a particularly important subject for us now as the stormwater program, particularly for the Phase 2 communities, launches into its second permit cycle. As most of you know, we're approaching the end of the first 5-year period in which the Phase 2 MS4s were supposed to get their programs up and running. And so we're going to touch on some of those things that basically should be already in place in your programs, and then also get really into some of the details of how you can demonstrate the effectiveness of your program. One of the things, and maybe John can chime in on this a little bit too, that we've been seeing in the annual reports that MS4s are required to provide every year, that it's sometimes hard to really get a sense of what is going on in that program, what real accomplishments you're making, and that sort of thing. And so we hope that this discussion today, along with some of the guidance materials that are available for you on the resource tab, will help you kind of improve that entire process, not only for your permitting authority, but also for the public who's interested in, what's going on in their community. So there's sort of multiple levels to that. So the first thing I wanted to do today is talk a little bit kind of on the broadest sense about planning and priority setting. One of the sort of key things, again, that we're not seeing so much is kind of a logical sense of why an MS4 stormwater program is doing what it's doing. And so perhaps an area where we could have some improvements is really in this sort of bigger picture planning and priority setting. So obviously some of the key things to look at would be to really know the watershed or watersheds that you're dealing with, and to really understand not only the water quality standards and the designated uses and all that sort of stuff, but also the impairments, the sources of those impairments. If you have TMDLs in that watershed, what are those TMDLs for? What pollutants are being identified there? What are the sources of those pollutants? And then if you've heard some of our previous discussions on post-construction particularly, you've probably been getting a sense that land use is very important. And so the current land uses in the watershed, plus what you would project out into the future, are very important things to consider. In many communities that have been experiencing a lot of growth over the last 10 years or so, the dynamics of the watersheds can change relatively quickly. And so if we can anticipate some of that in our stormwater programs by really looking at sort of what we consider future growth patterns, I think would be very helpful. And there are a number of other important things that you want to look at as well. Now, you probably, if you've looked at some of the guidance documents that we've issued over the last couple of years, you've probably seen some of this, and maybe you weren't sort of consciously aware of it, but perhaps the first couple places where it appeared was in the illicit discharge manual that the Center for Watershed Protection developed for us about 3 or 4 years ago. And in that thing, if you look at it, the steps, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in detail later, there is a part of the process there where we're asking the MS4 to sort of plan and prioritize their illicit discharge activities based on what they know is happening in different sub-watersheds within the community. And that same idea is extended in public education and public involvement. If you look at the Getting in Step manual, there's a whole section there about how to sort of plan your public education efforts, et cetera, et cetera. But one thing that I wanted to do, which is really kind of represented by the planning and priority setting arrows that go across the whole thing today, is that we also not only within each minimum measure need to figure out what we're doing, but we also need to sort of customize across all these minimum measures, and every community is going to be different. You're still going to have some baseline work in each one of these areas, but depending on the nature of the water quality problems in your particular area, your land uses, your infrastructure, and all those kinds of things that go into this, you're going to have different emphasis across the different minimum measures. And so that's one thing that we'd like to see more of in the stormwater pollution prevention plans that you're putting together, and also reflected then in the annual reports that are coming out every year. Another important piece of the planning, too, and we don't often see this so clearly, but you want to think at different scales, different geographic scales. So, for instance, you might want to start with the local watersheds or sub-watersheds within your jurisdiction. So a particular stream, a particular beach that you want to protect. You know you've got a water quality problem in a particular area and you want to address that. Those sorts of things. But then you also need to bump it up a level and talk about the watershed. And you may be then, as I've indicated here in this slide, cooperating with other MS4s who are also within the same watershed and contributing to these problems, and even higher at regional, more broad scale. So let me give you an example. And I'll give you an example in a second. From those three levels, you're going to want to look at a couple key things. Pollutants, hydrologic or physical impacts, particularly to small streams, biological impacts as well, if you have some data on that. And again, coming back to that current and future land uses. Also, the sources of pollutants are very important. And one of the things that's often not discussed very frequently is your ability to affect change. If, for instance, a particular problem is relatively easy for you to address, that should go into your priority setting process as well. So, for instance, if you already have the legal authority to require something and it's relatively easy to implement, that kind of sort of, if you will, bang for the buck kind of consideration should go into this as well. So from all this information at the three levels that we just talked about on the previous slide, pulling all this stuff together, what we'd like to see is a logical set of priorities, and measurable goals is kind of the key word that we've used. And I should mention that one of the key resources that you can use in helping you to set all this up is EPA's Measurable Goals Guidance, which was put out a number of years ago and is available on our website. And I have to admit that we made a small mistake and neglected to put that on our resources sheet today. So take a note and maybe pencil that in, the Measurable Goals Guidance that's on EPA's website. So here's the example I was talking about, the three levels. And I'm using Northeast Ohio because I just had the pleasure of attending an excellent conference, the Northeast Ohio Stormwater Conference, which was sponsored by the Tinkers Creek Watershed Association. So welcome to anybody from Northeast Ohio, and particularly the Tinkers Creek Watershed Association who's listening today. You had an excellent conference. And so what we're talking about here is starting at that local level. So you've got Tinkers Creek, for instance, and some issues that you want to address there. But Tinkers Creek, for instance, is part of a larger watershed, which is the Cuyahoga River watershed, which has many, many jurisdictions who are contributing to the overall problems in that water body. And then finally, Cuyahoga River of course, empties out into Lake Erie. And there are specific issues going on in Lake Erie, too, that we all want to contribute to. So in this next slide, and this is just some hypothetical sorts of things, but for instance, in Tinkers Creek, you might have an organic enrichment and dissolved oxygen problem that you want to deal with. In the Cuyahoga River, nitrogen and phosphorus are known problems, and also bacteria. In fact, the Cuyahoga River is impaired in different sections for both of those pollutants. And in Lake Erie, phosphorus is a major pollutant with the algae blooms that happen every summer and the dead zone that ends up in the water in July and August. And so what we want to do is look across all these different levels and for a particular MS4 then come up with a clear and logical set of priorities that helps to address each one of these things because we all contribute to the bigger picture overall. So that's the kind of thing that we'd like to see happening so that it's not just strictly on a local level and everybody's kind of doing their own thing and it doesn't really add up to, collective actions that are really going to make a difference on these broader watershed scales. So that's my main pitch for that one. Now, there's a couple other things, too, that I wanted to mention to you that kind of play into this whole issue of wanting to demonstrate the performance of your program better. And the first one here I've got, which you may have remembered we announced a couple months ago, but EPA has put out a new compliance monitoring strategy for the entire NPDES program. And this also lays out very specific goals for the stormwater program, and I've picked out two of those for the Phase 1 and Phase 2 MS4s there. And basically what this document does is set a goal that EPA and the authorized states, as you know, about 45 states are authorized to implement the NPDES program, but EPA and the authorized states would audit every Phase 1 MS4 within the next 5 years and inspect as needed to deal with things like complaints that come in from citizens or particular issues that the permitting authority would know about, that sort of thing. And for Phase 2 MS4, since there's so many more of them, the time frame is a little bit longer, but the basic goal is the same, and so that is to audit or inspect every Phase 2 MS4 within the next 7 years. So those are pretty ambitious goals for us collectively. But we do really have a very strong interest in making sure that this program is really being implemented on the ground. And as you know, the regs came out in 1999, and they did not become effective in permits until about 2003, depending on when a permitting authority actually issued the permit. And then that first permitting cycle from approximately 2003 until 2008 was the time that MS4s would then set up the program. And so now we're really into, the nuts and bolts of it, and we hope all those kind of basic elements have been put in place and that these programs are really now operating and able to really take on the work of addressing stormwater problems effectively. Another thing that you might want to know about, too, is that there have been two General Accounting Office reviews of the stormwater program, and both of them highlighted this particular issue about program effectiveness quite clearly and identified that it really was kind of a weakness in the program that we were not able to demonstrate very clearly what benefit we're getting out of all these investments across the country. So both of those are available if you care to look at them. Another thing to mention, too, is that our own regulations requires us, EPA, to reevaluate the program in 2012. And so we're well aware of that, and we're going to need a lot of information to go into this reevaluation of the program, which would then result in a pretty thick, probably, report to Congress from EPA on how effective the program has been and where we should go in the future. So those are a number of things that are kind of driving this whole need for better demonstration of results and that sort of thing. So now that we've done all that, those of you who have attended these webcasts before, now we have a poll question for you. And this will help us get a better idea of who's joining us today. So we have a number of choices. If you're new to this, what you want to do is select the little radio button, the circle to the left of the answer that best represents who you work for, who you represent. And so we'll give you just a couple seconds to do that, and then you click the Submit Answer button that's in black just below there to submit your answer, and we'll show you a graphic of everybody's answers in just a second.
And Nikos, while we're waiting for people to do that, I just want to make a note. We did have some minor errors in terms of the contact information on your audience screen. So the email for Betsy is actually under Nikos, and the phone number for Betsy is wrong. So you'll want to use the phone number for Karen, for both Betsy or Karen. And Nikos' contact information isn't up there, but he's pretty accessible if you sign up for NPDS News or other things like that. So we apologize for that. We will fix this in the archive, but unfortunately we can't fix it during the webcast.
Sorry about that little confusion, but yes, I think everybody knows how to get a hold of me pretty well. All right, let's take a look, John, at these results and see what we have here. As per usual, and expected, most are from a Phase 2 community there. We've got about 44%, about 13% from a Phase 1 community, 22% from a state or federal government, about 15% consultants, et cetera, And now to get a better sense of how many people are with you, because we know there are a lot of groups out there, if you can take just a second to answer the next poll question here. Again, just select that radio button to the left of the answer. We particularly like to know how many people are out there in groups, because it gives us a better sense of the overall attendance for our webcast. We know we have over 1,000 lines on today, and so we'll translate that then based on the result we get here into the number of people that are actually attending. So we'll give you just a couple seconds to answer this poll question. Remember just to select the answer that best fits you, and then hit the black Submit Answer button at the bottom of the screen there.
And Nikos, just a reminder for people to submit their questions in at any time. You don't have to wait until our Q&A breaks. And also, if you want to download the resource document, there is a resource button on your screen that includes some references, actually a 10-page white paper on the effectiveness guide, and then a single chapter is an example from the guide.
Yeah, and perhaps, too, while we're waiting here, John, this is a good opportunity to mention that the document that we're talking about today that the California Association of Stormwater Quality has put together actually does cost, I believe, $30 for a download. And we've gotten some email comments about that as to why does this cost money and that sort of stuff. So maybe it's worth explaining a little bit about that. The California Stormwater Quality Association is a nonprofit, and you'll hear more about that later. And they put a lot of resources into putting this document together, and they're simply, wanting to recoup some of their costs that they've invested in this, and so they are offering it to people, but they are asking for $30 for the download of that thing. I think that makes sense. A lot of these groups out there, like this association, need to keep going and need continued funding, and one of the ways that they can do that is by selling some of their products. Now, we should also mention that there are many products on their website that are for free as well. And personally, I think it's a really great document and certainly worth the low cost of $30, so we encourage you to take a look at that. So now let's quickly take a look at the results here. Lots of people sitting in their cubes by themselves, about 72%, and then you can see the other results. We do have about 24% in small groups, which is great. If you didn't have a chance to answer this poll question and you are in a group and you want to send us a message and tell us how many people are in your group, we would appreciate knowing that. Okay, now we're going to move on, and we're going to this next section, we're going to talk about what I'm calling kind of the essential elements of a successful MS4 program. And this is particularly geared towards the Phase 2 communities, and so we're going to run through this pretty quickly. But I did want to give you kind of a sense of, what our expectations are for a program at this point in time, now that, as I said, we're at the end of that first permitting cycle, when the MS4 should have basically everything in place and up and running. So the first one, we're going to talk about public education and involvement together, the first two minimum measures. And if you've been paying attention to our webcast series, you know that EPA has two manuals called the Getting in Step series. One is for outreach campaigns, and the other is for stakeholder involvement. And those provide you with a very good framework for developing and implementing an outreach campaign that will really get results. As we said here, doing this effectively is more than just printing some brochures and throwing them on a desk and hoping that people pick them up. We're really looking for some changes in the landscape. And if you listen to some of our previous webcasts, we've had a very detailed discussion, particularly about the topic of social marketing and how we can use social marketing techniques to get these kind of behavior changes. Another thing I wanted to mention, and I throw this graphic out there for you to consider, is that public outreach and involvement can be kind of its own thing and act as kind of a separate piece. So, for instance, if you decide in your community that you want to address pet waste issues or fertilizing private lawns and things like that, you do that obviously through the public outreach minimum measure. But this whole idea of public outreach really also is infused in all the rest of the minimum measures, and if we don't sort of consider that too, none of those will be successful. So, for instance, in illicit discharge, we've pointed out that, a key way to make that program successful is to let your citizens be your eyes and ears. If there's midnight dumping of chemicals and things like that, your citizens are your best bet as to the people who will see that first. And so if you establish some kind of a phone number or hotline where they can call in and they understand that this is indeed a problem, that somebody is dumping something down a storm drain, you'll have a much more effective program. The same thing in post-construction, to educate developers and builders about low-impact development techniques and the kind of good permanent stormwater controls that we can put in place will make that minimum measure much more effective. And same, we're going to talk later today about good housekeeping, and you'll see again that a big piece of that is training your staff in your public works departments and in your parks and recreation departments, and anybody else really that has some piece to play in preventing stormwater pollution. So keep that in mind. Again, if you haven't seen it already, the Getting in Step manual is available on our website. There's actually two of them, and it's listed on the resource guide. But basically what we'd like you to do here is the first step really is to assess the knowledge and understanding of stormwater in your community. And each community is going to be a little bit different in their level of sophistication. And we'd like you to really sort of take some steps, and the manual goes through just how to do that, to figure out how educated people are about stormwater problems, what's going on in your community, and the kinds of things that they do or don't do that might affect that. And then based on that information, plus the information that you have about water quality problems in your area, we'd like you to develop, and should have, I think, at this point, developed at least one sort of sustained effort to reach out to citizens or some sector of your community to start changing some of that behavior. So I mentioned a couple examples before about pet waste, if that's a particular problem, and a real water quality problem in your area, or fertilizers from lawns, or perhaps there's a sector such as restaurants or auto repair shops that's causing particular problems in your storm sewer system. And so we want you to have at least started on that. And also, public involvement is probably the most neglected of the minimum measures, and we'd like you to have set up something there so that you have some real public involvement, for instance, some kind of a citizens advisory committee or things like that. Illicit discharge is the next one we're going to go through, and as I mentioned, the Center for Watershed Protection has an excellent manual that you all should have, and if you need copies of this, please let me know, and I can send them out to you because we still do have hard copies available. But this manual goes through 8 kind of key steps, which we've summarized here, and it helps you to really sort of plan out and build an effective program. A couple things to mention here, particularly the third one down, this kind of desktop assessment of illicit discharge potential. As I mentioned, every community is going to be different, and there's different ages of infrastructure and different kinds of problems going on. And so what we want you to do is to look at your sub-watersheds and do an initial screening assessment so you have an idea of particular areas that might be hot spots and others that are maybe of lesser priority. And then as you go out into the field and you actually go out and look for illicit discharges, you can continually update that assessment so you build over time a better sense of where your real problems are, what kinds of problems you're experiencing. Now, some of the key elements here, of course, are an ordinance. This is a common element to a couple of these things. So we expect you to have an ordinance in place. We're also looking for a map of the system or outfalls. Depending on what your permit requires, the basic is the outfalls, but we really think that it makes sense to have a map of the entire system. Also, as I mentioned, that assessment of your sub-watersheds, there's a lot of information in the manual, too, about training staff and how to go about doing that. The tracking system that you'll need to keep track of your outfalls and the results of your screening. And also, of course, not only setting up this program, but we really do want to see some results there. And so we would have hoped by this time that you would have addressed at least all the obvious and flowing illicit discharges, which would be things like cross connections of sewage and things like that. So that's kind of our assessment there. And now I'm going to turn it over to John real quick, and he can talk about construction.
Thanks, Nikos. Yeah, and the one major element that's probably a challenge for most communities is managing erosion sediment from active construction sites. And Phase 2 specifically mentioned all sites disturbing 1 acre or more, including in the fine print there, sites smaller than 1 acre that are part of a larger common plan of development. We should note this is separate from the MPDS permits that are issued at a state level. This is for the municipal programs, municipalities running Phase 2 to implement their own program to control construction sites. But the one major element in there is to have an ordinance in place. And a lot of communities have an existing ordinance for erosion sediment control. What we're finding is that it may lack specific authority for adequate fines or specific authority to control other wastes as Phase 2 requires. So there's good housekeeping, pollution prevention type practices that should be in there. The ordinance also should address requirements that BMPs be implemented and that plans be submitted for review. But some of the key elements in the construction program are these plan review process to make sure that you have a specific and documented process to review plans, that staff is trained, that post-construction BMPs are included in that plan review, and Nikos will talk about post-construction next. And then also there is some public input in on the plan review process. Another major component is the inspection part, and major elements in there are that the municipality has an adequate inventory and tracking of sites. You know who is under permit in your municipality and where they are, maybe a prioritization of those sites, ability to respond to citizen complaints, and then adequate inspections and routines and target procedures for your inspectors. And then finally, an education program, not just for your own inspectors and plan review staff, but also for the builders and developers out there. Now I'll turn it back to Nikos for post-construction.
Thank you, John. We're moving through this very quickly. Post-construction, as we've said in a couple of these webcasts, is probably the most challenging of all the minimum measures for many of the MS4s out there to get their hands around. And the basic element here, again, is that you need a program to develop, implement, and enforce the implementation of permanent stormwater controls on any new development or redevelopment projects. And similar to what John said, of course, that's on the 1 acre or more common plan of development kind of thing. So some of the basic elements there are the ordinance. Again, this is the third element that we're talking about that has an ordinance. And you always have the choice of having an integrated stormwater ordinance where you collapse all of these things into one place, and that probably makes it most convenient. But you all want to also, separate those out so it's clear who needs to comply with which piece. And again, the requirements for having a plan review process where you're also referencing design criteria. Maintenance, of course, is a huge piece of this, and fines and penalties. Let me just say a couple words about the design criteria. Many communities out there are developing their own design documents, and we think that's great. Some of the smaller communities, though, that may be a little bit impractical. And so if you can reference or adapt, say, a very good state manual for your own purposes, that would be an acceptable way of doing that as well, and certainly at less costs. So what you might want to do in the case of a smaller MS4 where that's not affordable is that you might want to write some kind of an implementation guide that then goes along with the existing state manual. And again, as John talked about, the plan review process can be integrated and should really be integrated with the construction process. We're breaking it out here simply because that's the construction within the regulation. And then maintenance is probably the biggest challenge here of all, is to make sure that these BMPs are maintained over the long term. And again, communities have a choice, sort of a strategic choice here, whether they want to take on a lot of the maintenance burden themselves and have better control, but of course the cost of that is relatively high. Whether they want to try to get citizens and commercial establishments to take on the maintenance burden, which maybe has some lesser costs, but also requires detailed maintenance agreements and ongoing education process and inspection process to make sure that these things are getting done. So the whole maintenance question is probably the biggest challenge here in putting together a post-construction program. And John, you want to talk about municipal operations real briefly?
Sure. Municipal operations is really key because obviously the municipality should be managing its own activities in even a better fashion or more protective fashion than it expects of its businesses and other communities. So the really focus of this is adequate training for employees to make sure they know how to prevent and manage stormwater, clear standard operating procedures so they know exactly what they're supposed to do, and then a program that covers the main municipal activities and facilities. That's primarily the main maintenance yard or corporation yard for the municipality, but could also include, parks and waste transfer stations, wastewater treatment plants, and other municipal type of buildings. But the key here is training and adequate standards or operating procedures for staff.
Great, thank you, John. And now that we've just gone through the entire Phase 2 program in 10 minutes or less, we have a poll question, and we really like you to answer this one honestly. We are not tracking individual answers here, so be as blunt as possible. But based on that preceding discussion of kind of what we would call the essential elements or the basic elements of an MS4 program, we'd like to know how you're doing in implementing the program. So the first choice there is we have fully implemented our program. Yay, we're ready to go. Second choice, we've implemented most of the elements but still have a few significant things to do. Overall, the next one is we're about halfway there. In the next choice, we've got our ordinance in place, but we haven't made much other progress, which I think is a pretty common option. And then we still have lots of work to do. And again, we're not going to turn this over to the enforcement folks, but we really would like to know what's going on in your community. So we're going to take a look at those and see what kind of results we have here. Okay, yeah, we've got some good, keep clicking on those buttons and, again, be as honest as you can. And we'll show you what we've got so far. Okay, so wow, an impressive 18% said they have a fully implemented program. That's great and very encouraging. And another good news note here is 43% have basically, done a lot of work and really along the way. And then we have about 17% are in the halfway there category, and 6% here are admitting that just their ordinances are in place. I think it's probably more than 6%, but we'll take that answer. And 15% in the really honest category down there saying that they have lots more work to do. John, you got any thoughts on that?
Oh, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
We should note that these Phase 2 permits came into existence at different times.
Yes.
So not all of them came in online in 2003. In fact, some were just issued in the last year or two. So not everyone is at the same point in time, but very interesting results.
Yeah, yeah. All right, and now we're going to get ready. We've got a question break here.
Yeah, and to keep us on time, we're just going to take one question because we want to make sure we allow plenty of time for both Karen and Betsy to speak and answer their questions. Before we take the one question, I did want to remind everyone, if you need the technical help phone number, I'll read that off again. It's 800-833-2812. And the question we have, Nikos, is from Gerald in Honolulu, who asks, how does the CASCA guide differ, the CASCA Program Effectiveness Guide, differ from EPA's 2007 MS4 Program Evaluation Guide or Program Audit Guide?
John, I think that's a very good question, and they're probably somewhat complementary in a way, but the California Guide is really about demonstrating the performance of the program, so it really talks a lot about how you, and Karen and Betsy are going to get into this in quite a bit of detail, about how you gather and track information about the activities that you're implementing and how you would present that, say, in an annual report kind of framework. And the evaluation guide that we did last year is really targeted kind of the other way for the permitting authorities, for the states or EPA permitting authorities to go out and actually conduct a review of an MS4 program. So obviously there's going to be some overlap, but kind of the gist of where it's coming from, though, is from a very different perspective. One is oriented towards the MS4 and kind of their demonstration of what they're doing, and the other is for a permitting authority actually conducting a review.
Great. Thanks, Nikos. And it's nice to see our friends in Honolulu are up early to listen to this webcast.
Oh, wow. Yes, they must be up very early.
But let's, Nikos, just in the interest of time, let's move on with, do you want to introduce
Yes.
Karen, our next speaker?
Yes. We're, again, very happy to have Karen and Betsy join us today from the California Stormwater Quality Association to discuss their very excellent effectiveness assessment guide, which, as I mentioned, has been used by EPA in a number of different ways over the last couple of years. And we think that this guide is so good that we really wanted to present it to all of you so that you could learn and benefit from this as well. And so, Karen and Betsy, are you out there with us?
Yes, Nikos, I'm here, and I'm going to go ahead and take a couple of minutes to talk about the California Stormwater Quality Association before we jump into the manuals.
Excellent. And
I'm here, too, just in case you were wondering.
Yes, it's always good when we've had a little bit of a break in time there to make sure that everybody is still online, but we're glad that you're with us. And so, Karen, why don't you tell us a little bit about the association and kind of the genesis of the guidance document that we're about to get into.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Nikos, thank you on behalf of the California Stormwater Quality Association for allowing Betsy and I to participate today. Really, what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about CASCA, as we call it, and then turn the presentation back over to Betsy so she can actually walk through some of the concepts of the guidance document. For those who don't know, the California Stormwater Quality Association was originally formed in 1989, so we've been around for quite some time. And at that time, we were actually called the California Stormwater Quality Task Force. Now, in 2002, the task force officially transitioned into CASCA when we received our formal 501c3 nonprofit status approval. And that was really instrumental to us in kind of moving forward and doing additional projects like the one we're talking about today. The purpose of CASCA is really to assist the entities that are charged with stormwater quality management responsibilities with the development and implementation of stormwater goals and programs. And so we work a lot, and our membership is primarily made up of folks who have permits or assist those who have permits. We are a statewide, somewhat virtual organization, and we have a fairly diverse membership, including a number of different stormwater quality management organizations and individuals. And these folks include cities and counties, special districts, industries, and consulting firms throughout the state. We also hold and reach out to our general members in a variety of ways, including technical and regulatory meetings about once a quarter, and also an annual conference that we hold every fall, which receives quite a bit of interest. And we also have a website that's up and running, and I included the link there because, as Nikos mentioned earlier, there are a number, we are a nonprofit, and one of our goals is to further public education about stormwater, and there are a number of materials that we offer for free on the website, products that have been developed. So what I wanted to do now is just take a minute and just kind of look at our organizational structure to orient people. We have an 11-member board of directors, as well as an executive director, who's Jeff Brousseau. And our board of directors and executive director help guide the policy decisions and provide the governance for the organization. And the yellow boxes represent our executive program committee, and these are we have 14 different subcommittees who comprise our EPC, or executive program committee, and they really lead a lot of the technical work for CASCA. And you'll notice that there's a whole host of different orientations. There's legislation, there's training, watershed management, pesticides, et cetera. And the box that's highlighted is our effectiveness assessment subcommittee, and this is really the subcommittee that was primarily responsible for and took the lead and charge in developing both the white paper, which is one of the resources that's available today, as well as the guidance document, which we're going to be talking through. So that's really all the time I want to take regarding CASCA, and hopefully it provides a little bit of a background. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Betsy to introduce the guidance document and the key concepts.
Thanks, Karen. Let's see. Like Karen said, I'm going to talk a little bit about the guidance document that that CASCA developed, and talk through some of the key concepts. This guidance document, and I'm pretty sure this is the same everywhere, but in California, there are specific requirements in the MS4 permits requiring people to measure the effectiveness of their programs. And we heard from our members that they were not so sure exactly how to go about doing this. So we developed this manual in response to this request by our members. The first step was actually developing a white paper, and I think that's one of the resource documents that you have today that outlines some of the basic concepts related to effectiveness measurement, and we used that as a springboard to develop the guidance document. One of the things I wanted to note about that is that this is a collaborative process. We did this with a bunch of different MS4s throughout California, and we also had quite a bit of input from EPA. So one of the questions about the EPA guidance document earlier, like Nikos said, it's geared towards more how to get your program set up and make sure that it's being implemented. But I believe that it actually refers to a lot of the concepts that we use in the guidance document. Let's see. So the guidance document has quite a bit of different types of information in it. We define key terms and key concepts, and I'm going to use a lot of those terms today. We also present a strategy to do the assessing the effectiveness of your programs. We look at describing specific assessment methods and how they apply to the different minimum control measures or essential program elements. The other resource that we provided today was an example out of the guidance document that shows how you can apply effectiveness measurement to a specific essential element, the municipal operations. We have one of those for each of the different essential program elements in the guidance document. We also try, where they're available, to provide specific examples of how MS4s and stormwater programs have actually used these concepts to evaluate the effectiveness of their programs. So the first question that we usually get is why conduct effectiveness assessment to begin with, and this sort of helps guide the process for assessing effectiveness. First, and one of the first things is to just document that your program is progressing towards its goals and that you're meeting the requirements of your permit. You collect a lot of information through the stormwater program, and we want to make sure that that data is meaningful and useful. A lot of data that people collect in the very beginning is a lot of what you might refer to as bean counting. It's just documenting that you've actually been conducting the various activities and control measures, such as you've distributed brochures, you've conducted workshops, you've conducted inspections. But you also want to look at collecting data that tells you a little bit about how these activities are actually helping you to proceed towards your goals, your ultimate goals in your program. And we want to make sure that that data is meaningful and useful to allow you to determine what's working in your program and what may need improvement, and how to focus your program in each subsequent year of your permit cycle. It also allows you to identify where your resources can be best focused. And it also, by evaluating the effectiveness of your program, it allows you to demonstrate to your boards and your city councils, as well as your regulatory authorities, that your program is justified and the resources that are being expended are worthwhile. So the first key concept that we talk about in measuring the effectiveness of stormwater programs is the iterative process, or the adaptive management process. And we look at this as a cycle where you start out by planning your program activities and what you're going to be doing in the coming year. And based on what you've planned, you actually implement a program. And then hopefully at the end of that, you look back and say, how did we do? And stormwater programs can look at assessing the effectiveness of their programs by both how did the program itself work, programmatic measures, did we increase awareness or get people to change behavior, compliance rates improving. But we also want to be able to look at whether the programs, whether there's any changes, improvements in receiving waters and runoff quality. We want to be able to look at environmental assessment. So we look at both implementation assessment and water quality assessment. One of the key things, and I saw this as actually one of the questions that somebody asked, is how you can tell if your programs are actually having an impact on water quality. And this is probably one of the biggest challenges for stormwater programs, is to be able to make that direct linkage between the implementation of their programs and what's going on in the environment. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. So as far as the iterative process, this overall cycle, and once you've assessed your programs, the next step would be to go back to the beginning of the process and start planning based on what you've learned, planning the next steps and the next phases of your program. And what we look at is, so the next thing that we look at is how are we doing in this adaptive management process? Do people use this iterative process? And we think that in our conversations with MS4s and our interactions with them, that in general, people are definitely planning out what they're going to be doing and looking at what they need to do and how to make it happen and implementing their program. But whether they're actually effectively assessing their program and saying, how's my program doing and what am I learning from the various things that have gone on in my program, that we put more of a maybe on. Where I think that's one of the bigger challenges to stormwater programs. And when we ask someone, are you assessing the effectiveness of your program, most programs report back that they are conducting workshops, conducting training, conducting inspections, distributing brochures, putting out advertising and media campaigns. So they're looking at documenting that their program is up and running, that they're implementing their program. But the other side of that is that we want people to also look at whether the programs that they're conducting are having the desired impacts. And we show this as a pyramid because we're starting at the base level of getting your program implemented and moving on and progressing forward to implementing, to looking at how those programs are doing. And to do that, we've actually taken that pyramid that I showed you in the previous slide with just the two different levels and looked at the range of outcomes that we might expect from a stormwater program. And when I talk about an outcome, I mean the desired goal of your program. And you can look at the outcomes that you're hoping for from a stormwater program at a range of different levels. The first level being that you're documenting that your program is being implemented, which is what we call outcome level 1. At outcome level 2, we're looking at our target audience and seeing if, as a result of our programs, they are more aware of the issues related to stormwater pollution and the ways that their behaviors may be impacting water pollution. And and when I talk about a target audience, the target audience is going to depend on which of the program elements that you're looking at. For public outreach and public involvement, your target audience is typically the general public. For construction and post-construction, your target audience is often the building community, and your target audience for municipal operations is typically your own city or municipal organization and staff. But in any case, you want to make sure that at the very first level that they understand the issues. We hope that as the target audience understands the issues and are aware and have a knowledge of that they are motivated to actually make a change in their behavior, to implement BMPs, to stop using pesticides, or whatever the specific goal or target of a program is, whatever the outcome is that we're looking for. As people change their behavior, we hope that means that quantities of problem constituents are actually being prevented from entering the storm drain systems and waterways, so that we're reducing the total quantity or load from the sources of water pollution. And that ultimately leads to an improvement in runoff quality, discharge runoff quality, and then ultimately the ultimate goal of the stormwater program is to improve receiving waters. One of the other reasons that we break this down into a range of outcomes is that to achieve that measurable improvement in receiving waters can take a long time, and it's very challenging to get reliable data related to that, and long time meaning years. And you want to make sure in the interim that your program is progressing in the right direction. So being able to evaluate your program at different levels of outcomes helps to make sure that you're moving in the right direction while you're waiting to achieve that ultimate goal. The other aspect of this is that when we look at these different outcome levels and we use them to assess the effectiveness of what we're doing in the stormwater program, the lower levels are more programmatic, raising awareness, changing behavior, and are going to be more related to measuring the effectiveness of an individual activity inspection program, a training workshop, an outreach campaign. As you move up the outcome level pyramid, you are able to maybe combine the results from a few different activities and look at the effectiveness of the overall program element, your overall construction program, and at that point you may be able to start looking at effectiveness from at some of the higher levels. And finally, when you look at your overall program, hopefully all of those things combined together, you'll be able to look at the overall effectiveness of the stormwater program and what types of improvements you are seeing in water quality in the receiving waters and in your runoff. When we look at outcome levels, we also look at which ones are most applicable, which ones you're going to be able to assess effectiveness at for different minimum control measures. and depending on the minimum control measure, you may not be measuring. For example, you want to measure effectiveness of improving runoff quality for a public education and outreach program. You'll be focusing there more on looking at raising awareness and changing behavior. Looking at a construction site program, you're going to be looking at implementation of BMPs, so you're going to be looking at behaviors and not looking directly necessarily at awareness, but there'll be an inferred increase in awareness, but the direct measure will be at the level of changing behavior and reducing loads. So the outcome levels is one of the key concepts. And the next concept that I'm going to spend some time on is the strategy for assessing effectiveness. And the first aspect of this is determining what it is that you're trying to accomplish through your activity or your program level. In order to look at that focus and what it is you're trying to accomplish, a lot of times it's also where am I in my program? Am I just getting started? Do I know that my audience is aware of the issues? And so we use management questions at the different outcome levels to help us identify where we are and what it is specifically we're looking at in this cycle of our program. If we're looking at, does the activity or element raise awareness, or does it reduce loads from sources? If we can answer that question, it helps us focus what it is that we're trying to accomplish. The other aspect of establishing your focus is really trying to clearly define what you're trying to achieve, and that being the goal or the outcome that of the particular activity or that you're working on right at the moment. You also want to know, in order to measure improvement, you want to be able to know where you're starting from, and we refer to that as a baseline. A lot of the stuff that Nikos was talking about earlier that you all have implemented in your public education programs to assess knowledge of your audiences, that would be a baseline, a starting point. What do you already know, and what have you already asked your target audience about? You also want to know how you're going to measure whether or not you've achieved your goal. Goals tend to be pretty general, and we recommend coming up with a very specific target, and I'll give some examples in a minute. But the target will help you determine if your goal has been achieved. And again, to help focus your efforts, looking at what outcome level you're at. And a lot of times, again, that'll be where you are in implementing your program. If you're just getting started, you're at lower outcome levels. And if you've been working for a while, you may be able to start looking at things like improvement in runoff quality. So, again, we really think this idea of setting goals and targets is a pretty important concept because it helps to really define, if you know what you're trying to achieve, it's going to be a lot easier for you to figure out whether or not you've achieved it and how you're going to measure that effectiveness. So these are some example goals. One of them is a goal that's at the outcome level of documenting activities, and that's increase the implementation of proper protocols for storm drain cleaning. So that's a general goal. We've tried to make it more specific by saying that the specific goal is that all storm drains in an area are inspected and cleaned, and that's something that's specifically measurable. And then moving on to level 3, looking at behaviors, specific behaviors, by looking at decreasing pesticide use. So the next step in the effectiveness assessment strategy is determining a baseline condition. Again, like I said, where are you starting from? And again, this is asking yourself some questions. One of the things I would say about baseline information is that you collect a lot of information in your programs that will probably allow you to at least get a sense of of your starting point. And a lot of that information, such as tracking phone calls, tracking number of people participating in workshops, people coming to public events, that will help you develop baselines and help you start to assess the effectiveness of your programs. So once you have a baseline and you have a goal, you want to figure out how exactly you're going to assess the effectiveness of your program. And this is probably one of the key things that the guidance document provides some information on, and that is what types of methods are available to you. We've divided them up into some specific categories that depending on what you're evaluating, some of those are going to be more applicable than others. If you're looking at evaluating a public outreach program, using a survey of some type is a pretty effective method. If you're looking at an inspection program, a construction site, or industrial or post-construction program, direct observation is the method that is going to be most useful to you in evaluating the effectiveness of your program. Tabulation is a method that's useful at many levels, just counting things up. Again, how many people participated, how much stuff was collected, those sort of things. And again, as I've indicated, depending on what outcome level, what type of outcome you're looking at, some of these methods are going to be more applicable than others. As I said, surveys are really good for public outreach, and they're really good for measuring whether or not your audience is aware of your program and aware of basic messages. Inspections are good for measuring behavior. Monitoring is going to be the most effective method of looking at, if you get to the higher outcome levels, of looking at improvements in the environment. So this is, again, just an example of what we're talking about when we talk about trying to figure out how to assess the effectiveness of your program. You set a very specific target. In this case, looking at the second one, conducting outreach to reduce pesticide use by residents by 10%. So this is what we're doing. It's pretty specific as to how much reduction we want to see. And then we need to think about, how am I going to know if I've achieved this? Looking at reported use through surveys, being able to track what's being sold in local stores is another method that may be useful in looking at if pesticide use is being reduced by the general public. But again, the more specific your target is, the easier it is going to be to figure out how to actually assess your program. Then probably the most important aspect of the strategy to assess the effectiveness of your program is how you're going to use the information. And again, this is, making sure that the data that you're collecting is pretty meaningful and that it's going to be useful to you in telling you what to do next, what's working and what isn't working. And also the other thing, as I said earlier, is that using this information to report and communicate to the public, to your governing boards, to your regulatory authorities about what you're doing well and what kind of accomplishments you have is also pretty critical and a good outcome of effectiveness assessment. That when you using the information, whatever kind of data you collect, looking at it and looking at what it's telling you by looking at, does it tell me if there's an observed change? Do I see any trends? Is there any statistical, quantitative analysis I can do? The other thing is making simple comparisons. We had this many people come to our household hazardous waste collection events this year. They turned in this much stuff. That's this much more than the previous year. So tracking from year to year, comparing different things that you're able to measure are all things that help you to get more out of the information through data analysis. This is an example that I use a lot on how you use the information from your effectiveness assessment to plan for the future. In the city of Davis, we had a pesticide outreach program, and we had a variety of different types of outreach that we used. The two things that are shown in this slide is a sign that was put in parks and open space areas showing demonstration. Nikos, did you have something you wanted to say?
Sorry, Betsy, I didn't mean to interrupt you right in the middle of a slide there, but...
Oh, I could have, sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. But it was occurring to me as you were going through this thing about the assessment piece about how critical really this is in kind of wrapping up the whole thing. And I was going to add that one of the things that we're sometimes seeing, and we don't want to encourage MS4s to do this, is to basically just staple every piece of paper that they can think of together and call it an annual report. We have seen some of those that are just, 400 pages of tables and stuff like this, or spreadsheets and things like that. So we really do want to see that this kind of analysis happens. So if you have any, sort of thoughts, but I just think that's a critical piece of wrapping this thing up. And
I think that that's key, too, is make sure that the information, that you pulling all the information together and presenting it in a way to show what you've done and to summarize information is also a good way of kind of synthesizing the information that you have into a useful message. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, back to this example of how we used information. Two of the things that we did in this outreach program, although we did quite a few different things, newspaper articles, advertisements, workshops. We did some signs in parks and open spaces showing examples of integrated pest management as one way of educating the public. And another method we used was doing theater slides before movies in Davis. And we did a bunch, so we were evaluating our program and looking at which things had been most effective. And one of the things we found is that way more people recalled our movie theater slides than recalled these signs in the public and open spaces. We also found through our surveys that people were very interested in the wildlife areas that we have in Davis and that they remember those and that they happen to be a very effective location for conducting outreach. So we understood that in our subsequent outreach, we wanted to relate any messages related to stormwater to our wetlands, which are part of the water that goes into our wetlands comes from the city's stormwater runoff. We also found from our surveys that people really understood things like the difference between the storm drain and the sanitary sewer, the big, broad-based messages. So we started doing in our subsequent theater slides, which the one I have on is an example of, was that we would start putting in very specific behavior messages of things that you could do to make it easier to reduce your pesticide use. And so we used all the information from our surveys from our initial phase of our program to focus on the things that were working well and to move to messages that we knew our audience still needed to get. And so that's one example of using the information that was very helpful in Davis. So again, a lot of the effectiveness assessment that is pretty straightforward for cities to do, municipalities to do when you start looking at this, is measuring the programmatic aspects of how things are going. You know, are your programs raising awareness? Do people recall the program messages? Are people reporting changes in their behavior? But as you move further up the ladder, it's a lot harder to measure change. And part of that is the time required. Some of that is, as many of you know, is the variability in data, and especially with stormwater that you have to wait until you actually have runoff to measure and characterize. So it becomes much more difficult and requires much more in the way of resources to measure outcomes at the higher levels, which is, again, one of the other reasons that we emphasize doing assessment of the programmatic aspects of the stormwater program. The other thing that we'd like to be able to do, and I think Karen's going to show you some examples of this in a minute, but it's a very challenging thing to do, is to be able to say, we know that the things that we did in our program had an impact on the environment. And making those linkages is very difficult. And again, I think, as I said earlier, probably one of the biggest challenges that we face in the stormwater management program in the future. So I think that's everything that I have. And Nikos, are you going to do this poll question?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Betsy. That was
Okay.
very helpful. And we have a poll question here to find out how often you do this kind of effectiveness assessment in your stormwater planning and program implementation efforts. So, again, we have a range of choices there for you to choose. If your program does this for most of your activities, most of your minimum measures on a kind of regular basis, that would be the first choice. If you've done a little bit of this kind of hodgepodge here and there throughout your program, that would be the next choice. If you're just kind of tracking your activities, which we think is a pretty common one, that's the next choice. And then perhaps we rarely assess or haven't really gotten kind of started, and that would be the last choice. And while folks are answering that, one thing I would, it was kind of funny, Betsy, that you mentioned the theater slides, and it is kind of funny that it kind of bears out in other MS4s that I've heard about, that the theater slide method is very effective, that people tend to remember it quite well. And the other good thing about them is that they're generally pretty low cost to get those things to run. Was that your kind of experience as well?
Yeah, the thing that's good is that I think you have a captive audience in the movie theater. They're sitting there before the movie, and they're not, and so they really have to look at the slide. And we find that any place where we do outreach that either induces you to think about the environment, or where you have nothing else to do basically but look at something, are both effective approaches. The other place where we found outreach is actually really effective was at our wildlife ponds, because people are there thinking about the environment. So
that's a very important part of the whole getting in step process, is kind of finding that venue for delivering your message, and some are much more effective than others. So here we have the results of the poll question, and it looks like about 10% are really doing this kind of thing regularly. So we have some room for improvement there. About 23% are doing it sometimes, which is great and encouraging. About half or so are basically doing the tracking of the activities, and 20% are in that kind of, we're going to get started with this hopefully. So any sort of thoughts or comments on that, Karen or Betsy?
Well, this is really typical of what we see, and it is the easiest thing for people to do and to think about is what they're doing in their programs, which is why I think you see 47% there. And it's just moving people into that mode of, what is the actual impact is what we've really been trying to do through these guidance documents and putting out these outcome levels to get you thinking about, well, there are other things I can look at to tell me how my program is doing.
Absolutely. So I guess our webcast is rather timely, and that there's some room for improvement here among the MS4s as they kind of move forward with this into the next permit cycle. So anyway, John, I think we have a question break next. Are there any questions out there?
Yeah, the questions are rolling in. We ask people to continue to submit questions as we go on, but we'll take a couple questions now. Betsy or Karen, Trevor from Mississippi asks about the requirements to do program effectiveness in permits or through other mechanisms. Can you comment about, how these program effectiveness assessments are essentially required, and are you aware of other states outside of California requiring program effectiveness assessments?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. This is Karen. I'll go ahead and field that. Essentially, the permits, especially the Phase 1, to some extent the general Phase 2, at least have a baseline requirement to conduct effectiveness assessments as a part of their annual report each year to determine the effectiveness of the BMPs. Historically, it's been kind of a one-sentence, two-sentence type of requirement. With the recent round of permit renewals, especially for the Phase 1 communities, and probably also likely with the Phase 2 general permit, we're seeing much more very detailed, somewhat prescriptive requirements to actually conduct effectiveness assessments in some detailed manner. And so really the timing for the guidance document to come out and the permit language we're now seeing in California is the guidance document is definitely needed, because a lot of MS4s are left not understanding, well, how do we talk about what we do and how do we capture it? What's the framework we can put it in so we're all talking the same terminology? So we're seeing a lot more prescription in the permits. Outside of California, I don't know specifically. I haven't done a lot of research in that area. I suspect that California may have somewhat of the more prescriptive requirements, but that's just my gut.
Yeah, and I think the most permits have some pretty general language about program effectiveness assessments through the annual reporting process, so similar to the first comment you made, but it's not very specific in most of the permits I've seen.
And I think, this is Nikos, I think we are seeing that some of the permitting authorities in other parts of the country are kind of, if you will, a little bit sort of frustrated with the information that they're getting back from the MS4s. So I think in the next round of permits, you're going to see some tightening up of that.
Okay, the next question comes from Lisa in Colorado, who asks, in terms of MS4 setting water quality goals that are attribute improvements in water quality to the MS4 program, what about when some other impacts are occurring in the watershed that are outside of the MS4's control? Karen or Betsy, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so I think what you're asking And this is a challenge that there are often lots of different organizations that are putting messages out, or that things are happening. I think that's what Lisa's referring to, and that can be a challenge to determine if it's the impact of your own program or a cumulative impact. One of the things that we do a lot is that that if we have a public event or we do something along those lines, we'll ask people, how did you hear about this event? You know, where did you find out about it? Hopefully they'll say, oh, we saw it, on your website or whatever. Another thing that we do to attribute things directly to your program is if you can add into written material something like a coupon to redeem for, a less toxic pest control or something else that encourages a behavior in the general public, then you know that came from your program, and so you can make that connection.
I think, too, the thing that I would add is I think that's a positive impact. There's probably also a negative impact that can occur, especially if you're looking at receiving water quality, if you're talking about certain run-on types of issues. And that's where I think we have one example in the case study section where we're going to look at some pretty large programmatic and regulatory changes that occurred within a watershed, but how long it took to actually look at receiving water change. And those types of changes, like Betsy was saying, are very difficult given the variability, all the different sources and loads that you have. So that, if we're looking at levels 5 and 6, the bottom line is that these are long-term assessments that have to happen on an annual basis. You can look at intermediary kind of impacts, programmatic impacts, like Betsy said, but teasing out all those variables from a water quality standpoint takes a very long time.
Thanks. And we'll just take one more question before we go with Karen's case study. Jim from Schenectady asks about the costs of doing these assessments. And he specifically asks about serving citizens or the education component, but maybe you can also comment generally about the overall cost of doing program effectiveness assessments.
So cost of measuring the effectiveness, it's going to vary. Doing something like a public opinion survey can be a little bit more resource intensive. There are ways to make it less expensive by limiting the number of questions you ask, or I've also had really good success with using a mailed survey versus a phone survey. That can sometimes be a little less costly. But the other thing that you can do to reduce the cost of effectiveness assessment is to look at simple things that you add on to something that you're already doing. If you have a turn-in event or a household hazardous waste collection facility, for example, as people come, you just track by asking a few questions. Again, where did you hear about the program? What are you turning in today? What did you turn in last year? So you ask a few questions to get a little bit of information, and then you just track that information. You add in a coupon, or you put in a phone number that people can call on outreach piece, and you track how many people call that number. Those sort of things. So little simple add-ons can give you a lot of information without being as resource intensive and costly. I think that answers the question. Karen, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you covered it.
Yeah, and I have one thing to add. This is Nikos again. Particularly with the public education effort, if you MS4s look at the Getting in Step manual, there's some very helpful things there about using existing data to both establish your baseline and to continue measuring your effectiveness of your efforts. So using existing data as possible, or partnering with other organizations like universities and things like that might be doing it as well. So there's quite a bit of information there.
And, I'd just like to emphasize what Nikos just said, is that if you look at information you're already collecting for different reasons in your programs, I think that you'll very often find that you have a lot of useful information that you can use in effectiveness assessment. I think Nikos is absolutely right there.
Great. So we'll move on now for Karen and talking about a case study on municipal. And I just pushed this slide for you, Karen.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so now that Betsy has gone through the guidance document, some of the key concepts, one of the critical first step items that we identified within the subcommittee was the need to make sure we were all talking about the same key concepts, the same terminology, so that we were all on the same page together as we move forward. But now I'm going to take those concepts and apply them to what I'm going to call for short municipal operations. And what I'm meaning here is the minimum control measure, pollution prevention, housekeeping for municipal operations. And I'm really going to identify how, using this as kind of a case study, how the manual can be applied throughout. And one thing that I just want to mention is that this is really, the guidance document is meant to be a resource tool for you and to use as you, like Nikos said, prioritize your program. You're not necessarily going to go through and do this for every single aspect of your program. You may want to start with identifying goals and targets and baselines for one element or one activity as it fits for your program. So looking forward, the guidance document really presents information in a variety of different ways to function as a resource. And one of those ways is that each of the minimum control measures, or major program elements as we also call them, actually has a fact sheet that's been developed. And so I'm going to walk us through the fact sheet for municipal operations, and this is in fact one of the resources that's being provided to you today, just to show you how we apply the concepts. And so in each fact sheet actually provides kind of hands-on guidance for assessing effectiveness and provides a lot of information just to kind of get the juices flowing and have you think about, well, if this doesn't apply to my program, what might, or how might I phrase things so it makes sense to us. And each of the fact sheets is structured the same and identifies kind of the general purpose for the minimum control measure, identifies the applicable outcome levels, establishes kind of goals and baselines, as Betsy said, identifying what methods may apply, and then how you might want to analyze the data and present the information. And within each one, again, we have examples that are provided. So as you look at the slide in front of you now, really what we've worked through first is, okay, when we're talking about the pyramid and the outcome levels, for municipal operations, what do we think can be assessed? And for this, we're identifying that it's levels 1 through 4. So everything from documenting all the activities you're doing up to and including reducing loads from sources. Again, recognizing that levels 5 and 6 are kind of overall large stormwater program as a whole type of assessments. And so then moving on from there, the next section, once we kind of identify, okay, when we're talking municipal operations, these are the activities we're talking about, and here's our applicable outcome levels. The guidance document then talks about how you can go about establishing goals and outcomes or ways in which you want to collect data for your program. And again, these are just strictly provided as examples and would need to be modified for your program. But essentially what we want to do is, when you're looking at this table, for example, outcome level 1 is documenting activities. And so we have a general goal there that we want to develop and implement the program to comply with the basic permit requirements. So are you doing everything that you need to do that you agreed to in your stormwater management plan, that you agreed to in the permit? And so examples of some of the data collection for outcome level 1 and ways to track and express the outcome level include things such as, yes, we performed street sweeping at a certain frequency. We cleaned a certain number of storm drain inlets pursuant to a certain frequency. We received a number of different complaints that we followed up on. Again, these are just ideas. And the point being here is that, like Betsy and Nikos kind of said, is that there are a host of things you're probably already doing, and this really provides a framework for you to plug them into to say, okay, I'm at an outcome level 1 or I'm at an outcome level 2. Moving forward, I also just want to recognize that newer programs that may just be starting will likely be focused, because there's so much to do at the beginning, more at an outcome level 1. But I think there's a little bit of an expectation that as the program matures, that you can then start to assess at outcomes levels, 2, 3, and 4. As you begin to get your baseline data and your feet under you, you can move forward. So then once you kind of establish your, which outcome levels apply and the goals and the ways that you want to express the outcome levels, you can then start to think a little bit more about providing quantitative targets for your program. And so, for example, and Betsy had mentioned this, so taking it that next step to say, if you look at the very bottom, for example, that we would like to decrease our pesticide use for landscape maintenance. Maybe that's an overall goal, that you want to decrease how many pesticides you're using and perhaps increase your IPM, or integrated pest management techniques. And so one way that you might quantify or provide some sort of a target to help you interpret whether or not you're reaching your goal is to include something like that you would like to decrease pesticide use by 20% in targeted locations. Maybe these are locations that are next to 303D listed water bodies for toxicity or for certain pesticides. But it's a way to say, here's our overarching goal, here's how we're going to determine or interpret whether we're at our goal, and here's a projected time frame. And again, these are really kind of internal and a way for you to adjust and figure out what you need to do to make these things happen. And also, again, recognizing that these types of goals and targets all have to be lined up with the priorities for your program. The next part, once you establish the goals and targets, as Betsy said, and again using these examples, you can then kind of start to merge all of this information together and identify for your goals and targets what types of data you're going to collect and what types of assessment methods you think you might use. And again, the document talks a lot about what we mean when we say confirmation or tabulation and quantification, and Betsy kind of went over that a little bit. But an example here, and what this table does is it kind of pulls all this information together. So if we look at the task or the goal that we have to develop at the very bottom, to develop and implement a cleaning schedule and protocols for storm drain system maintenance, at the very bottom you may say, well, in order to determine whether we're at this goal, we're going to collect this type of data, which might be number of catch basins that are clean, maybe it's the numbers that are inspected, it might even be how much material is removed, and assess it at the appropriate outcome level and using the methods that you've identified. Within the guidance document itself, we actually have a whole series of these tables just to provide examples. You clearly, again, would customize it for your program, but it gives you a way to kind of start to pull all the information together. And already I think the subcommittee itself sees things that we would already start to like to improve on some of this. And I think that, so we'll move on from there. So what I want to do now is, I mean, again, we're kind of talking generically about, that we need to determine what outcome levels apply and that you can establish your goals. Maybe you also establish some numeric targets to help you interpret those goals. Then figuring out what data you would like to collect and what method you're going to use. But now what I'd like to do is take a step away a little bit from the document itself and look at how these concepts are being applied right now with some of the MS4s in California. And again, some of these folks have already moved forward with some of this because of the fact that they have very specific permit requirements and expectations that they need to start showing effectiveness of their programs and the impacts their programs are having, not just that they're implementing them. And so some of the examples that I'm going to pull from in the subsequent slides, and so providing credit where credit is due, we have some of the examples are up on the screen that you're seeing now. So what I'd like to do is actually walk through the pyramid and identify for each one of the outcome levels and associated management question how people are currently reporting some of this out within their annual reports. So for example, outcome level 1, which is something that everybody right now can report out on, documenting your stormwater program activities. Again, the management question that Betsy had mentioned earlier that we're looking at is the activity being implemented? This is really a confirmation, yes or no. We're doing what we said we were going to do or we're not, or providing rationale as to why you're not. And so some examples of outcome level 1, and I'm going to do two things. I'm going to identify just in general some of the different ways that you can express these outcome levels, but also show you some of what I think are a little bit more of the innovative ways that some people are also visually kind of assessing what the data is telling them instead of just having a host of data tables. So for example, for municipal operations, some of the outcome levels or some of the ways that you can look at outcome level 1 include, or report out on it, include, numbers of stenciled or marked catch basins, whether or not you developed inspection forms and guidance materials, if you've had to prioritize your catch basins, which some people do, identifying that you've already done that, and if there are changes year to year, and numbers of basins that you've inspected and or cleaned. And again, these are pretty easy things to report out. And the table that I've included here, I really like this. I saw this, and I think it's a nice way to report out information a little bit different than just having information in a bulleted form, for example. You could also graph this information just to show year to year. But you could also, what this MS4 did is they actually looked at the activity and the targeted outcome, and then they actually looked at measures of success, and they identified here was our target, here's what we actually did, and here's our % completion. And this gave them a way to figure out how are we implementing our program? Are we happy with that or not? Do we need to make some changes? And that's that feedback loop of if you didn't complete something you thought should be completed, then do you need to change something in the next year to make sure that you get closer to your target? For outcome level 2, we're looking at raising awareness and, again, making sure that your target audience is getting the key messages and concepts that they should have as they move forward. And the management question being, does the activity or element raise awareness? So when we're looking at that, primarily, as Betsy mentioned, we're really looking at measuring level 2 with surveys and different ways to determine or to identify how people can report out what they are aware of and or what they're reporting their behavior is. So you can use this for a little bit for level 2 or level 3 in a qualitative sense, looking at reported behavior change. And the purpose of the table here is really to kind of show that, for example, with this municipal operations, they've taken a table and identified for, in this case, integrated pest management and fertilizer guidelines, or that portion of the municipal program. They're reporting out here, can we report out at level 1, 2, 3, or 4, et cetera. And they've identified for training, for example, that's training at level 1, they're looking at the numbers of people who are actually coming to the training sessions, but at level 2, they're going to do an add-on or can do an add-on for relatively little cost to look at before and after pre- and post-workshop or training surveys to look and see, did the key messages get through? Will people perhaps, are they aware enough now to make that behavior change? And that's where qualitatively you can then also look at level 3 with behavior change to say, people did understand the guidelines, and we're seeing fertilizers, for example, applied better. So there's a way that you can start to link a little bit level 2 and level 3. For outcome level 3, we're now looking at behavior change and determining is people's awareness raised such that they can actually now change the behavior for a specific activity. And a couple of ways to express this. For this, we're primarily looking at behavior change, translating into better implementation of BMPs, better compliance. And so some examples for municipal operations include looking at perhaps the number of facilities that are in compliance. There are some requirements, at least in California, that the municipal facilities themselves need to comply with some certain level of BMPs, and there's some self-auditing that goes on internally. And so, for example, this graph shows how this municipality over time is tracking compliance at the municipal facilities and dividing this up by looking at through inspections, was the facility in full compliance, partial compliance, or were they not in compliance? And over time, trying to make sure that the blue bars, which are full compliance, are, increasing, and hopefully the red or the yellow, which is partial compliance or not in compliance, are decreasing over time. And you can see that you do see somewhat of a trend, perhaps from 03, 04, 04, 05 forward. And the idea being that even if you get a result you don't like, you can use that information to make sure that you focus more. Maybe more training or getting to some of the key staff who are in charge of those facilities can help raise those percentages a little bit more. So it gives you a way to determine where do I need to focus my resources during this next period, where are we having problems, or are we doing okay right now? And maybe you can maintain your baseline level of effort and move some additional resources somewhere else where you're not seeing you reach the targets that you've set for yourself. For outcome level 4, again, we're looking here at reducing loads from sources and identifying does the activity or element assist in achieving that. And for municipal operations, it's kind of a nice one because there are some good examples and ways that you can look and quantify load removals and or load prevention. So for example, municipal operations, a lot of information that I see reported out includes pounds of fertilizer applied over a certain number of land area so that things can be normalized. Same thing with active ingredient of pesticides over a certain land area. Looking at street sweeping and actually the loads that are removed from the sweeper and translating those to being loads that were potentially prevented from actually going into the catch basin. Materials removed from catch basin, and also household hazardous waste. Tracking that over time to determine, even though it may not be a one-for-one, it's a potential pollutant load that may have ended up in a storm drain. So it's a way to start getting our hands around how much material may be prevented. And these two examples kind of show graphically how it's nice to, I think, just moving from the data tables to some graphics just so that you can start to see certain trends and figure out if you think your program's going in the right direction. And so the graphic on the left is just showing you a little bit on how fertilizer is being applied over time and how they're tracking that, and then street sweeping over time on the right. The last thing, and the more difficult, as Betsy mentioned, is really looking at levels 5 and 6. And while I realize that the Phase 2 communities aren't necessarily themselves having to go and monitor necessarily, there are ways that water quality data can be pulled together to look at things over time. And so for level 5, we're looking at, does the element or program result in improved runoff quality? And also for level 6, are we seeing a change, an observed change in receiving waters? And so for the sake of today's discussion and for the time, I am going to go ahead and talk about these using one example that we have, but talk about them in concert. But really, before I do that, I want to just briefly mention that we recognize that this is one of the hardest levels to demonstrate. And when you're looking at levels 1 through 4, these are things you can do now or improve on now and add to your program. Levels 5 and 6 are very long-term. You're not going to be able to do this on a year-to-year basis, and you'll need lots of data. There's lots of interannual variability that you deal with, and you need to really look at your whole program when you're thinking about levels 5 and 6. As Betsy said, you're not going to look at levels 5 and 6 for public ed. You're going to say, how is my stormwater program doing? And so one success story that I just want to point out is from the Newport Bay watershed. And for those who aren't familiar, the Newport Bay watershed is actually located in Orange County in Southern California, and so it's just south of the LA area, just to orient yourself. And really the purpose of this is to just kind of show you a brief history or walk through a brief history of this type of receiving water change. The first thing I want you to note is that when we're talking about this change, and it's a pretty impressive change, but we're looking at over 30 years of data being collected. And so again, we're talking about a long time, and as you can see with all of the different data points, there's an incredible amount of variability from year to year. So a couple of the main things, just walking you through the time frame, is that San Diego Creek empties into Newport Bay, again, which is just south of the LA area, and it's one of the main tributaries that goes into Newport Bay. And in the 70s, nutrient monitoring started to occur in the late 70s because there was awareness in the local governments there that there was an issue related to algal blooms and to some of the nutrients. So there was some early monitoring that took place, which is a really good thing given now how much monitoring occurs there. It gives a little bit of background. And in the 80s, if you start following the graph across, in the 80s, there were some source and load identification that went on, and there were some nurseries that were identified as a major source. And those nurseries were then the regional board, who's the permitting authority in the area, issued permits to those nurseries to try to bring their discharges under control. So you have a major regulatory action that occurred, and you start to see some drop-off after that occurred. In the 90s, there was also kind of the earlier portion, early to mid, there was a major regional BMP that was put in place, and it's called the San Joaquin Marsh System. And essentially what it does is it takes a very large portion of the creek water, runs it through the marsh, which removes a large portion of the nutrient load, and then puts it back into San Diego Creek. So you have a major regulatory action, a very large BMP. Also in the 90s, of course, then in 91 in particular, you receive your first stormwater permits. So again, you're starting to see some additional work in the stormwater area and looking at urban discharges. In 1996, this creek was actually listed on the 303D list, and in 1998, a TMDL was adopted with a pretty comprehensive regional monitoring plan. And so from there, you see some additional decreases that are ongoing. And again, you still have some variability between years. But the main point here when we're talking about integrated assessment and cause and effect, you really the realization that there's a lot of other activities and regulatory issues that can be going on in the watershed that will affect change in addition to your stormwater program. And this is one really good example, but again, it took a very long time to actually see this. And at the very end, I'm just going to speed up here a little bit for time, just looking at some of the change that we've seen over the last 10 years, and it's pretty remarkable. So my last point that I want to make and then move on to the summary is just that as you begin to look at your assessment, You need to make sure that you bring that back into your next year using the iterative process. What did you learn from your assessment? Do you need to make changes? Do you need to improve in some areas where you're seeing some less than desirable results? How are you going to take that data and use it to improve your program or shift resources where they may be better needed? And that's a part that I think we can't overlook. So just in summary, and then I'll turn this back over to Nikos, is that this is really just one approach for documenting effectiveness. We tried to provide a context and some similar terminology so we can all talk about the same thing. It assess and completing the iterative process, which right now sometimes may not be fully utilized. And we're really looking at the impacts of the program, not just did you do what you had to do, but what were the impacts of those. And it helps look at intermediary progress. But again, this is still evolving, and again, we're seeing things all the time that we think we can improve on and additional examples we can provide. So I would just say stay tuned as we move forward. And so with that, Nikos, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. I know we have another poll question and then some questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Karen. That was great. And two things to mention, by the way. Here's the URL again for this excellent document, which I would encourage you to download. And also don't forget EPA's Measurable Goals Guidance, which is on our website, which you can get, which echoes some of the same things. It's a little older, so the CASQA document that we've been discussing today is kind of a fresher approach, I think, we could say. So we have another poll question, and then we're going to devote the rest of our time to questions from the audience. So this question, we're asking you about your pollution prevention, good housekeeping processes within your MS4. And we want to know how well you are doing with the different levels of tracking. So are you doing level 1, which Karen and Betsy both described, is kind of tracking those basic activities or beams. Level 2, you're conducting some surveys of staff or the general public, so you've moved up one level in the pyramid. Are you doing level 3 to track compliance rates or the rate of BMP implementation, those kinds of behaviors by your municipal staff? Level 4, you've got some tracking of the amount of pollutants that you're reducing or the loads that you're reducing, or you just haven't gotten that far. And keep in mind what Karen and Betsy both said, that the first 4 levels can often apply to a particular minimum measure, and then we get to the higher levels. Those can sort of cut across different measures and really kind of assess the effectiveness of the entire program. So we'll take a look at this poll question real quick here. Maybe you need a couple seconds still to answer this, and not very many have answered yet. One thing I did want to mention to you is that later this summer, by the way, relating to levels 5 and 6, which is the whole monitoring thing that Karen mentioned just a second ago, EPA has a grant with the Center for Watershed Protection to develop a manual on how to do water quality monitoring for Phase 2 MS4s. And we expect that document to be completed and available this summer, and we'll obviously announce it in NPDS News. And it's true what Karen said, that most MS4s in the Phase 2 program are not required to do monitoring, but some kind of monitoring obviously would be very helpful in demonstrating the overall effectiveness, and so this would be a guide to go about doing that. All right, let's take a look at this poll question, and Karen and Betsy, feel free to jump in. So it looks like what we would expect, 43% are tracking those basic beams of program implementation. And then we've got about 7% in level 2. And then interestingly, it starts to go up, 16% in level 3 and 15% in level 4. So that's quite encouraging. And then as also might expect, about 18% haven't quite gotten there yet. Any thoughts on how that kind of relates to things that you're seeing in California?
Yeah, a couple thoughts that I have, and Betsy may also have. One thing is that I think that a lot of people are doing what the guidance document talks about. There may not be some of the goals and target setting necessarily, but I think a lot of people are tracking a lot of information because they've gotten used to doing that. And hopefully what the guidance document does is provide, again, kind of a context for where you house that information and how we talk about that information. But I also think that 43% could also probably be moved a little bit as people think about this a little bit more. They may realize that there are little things they can do or ways that they shift their thinking about it to increase the level 2, 3, and 4 reporting out. So I don't think we're talking about whole different changes in programs. It's just a little bit of a shift in how we're talking about it and where we put the numbers.
Yeah,
Betsy, I don't know if you have a thought.
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts. Just looking at the fact that level 2 is lower, this is one of the things that we talk about where, depending on what you're evaluating or assessing, some of these outcome levels may not be as readily measurable. And this is the case with pollution prevention, good housekeeping. You really are looking at specific behaviors that you want to see implemented, so it actually is a little bit more direct and a little bit more easy to measure the compliance rate, the implementation of BMPs, the amount of stuff, of pollutants being removed from entering the storm drain system than it is to directly measure awareness and understanding. And then the other thing that becomes apparent, too, when we look at these downloads of information where you are tracking all this stuff is that it's really useful to sit back and look at that information and say, what is this telling me? You know, what do I know? What's working really well? Where are things that we could work harder? Where should we be refocusing our efforts? You know, I think that step of saying, what am I learning from this is a really key aspect of being able to use this effectively to focus and plan your program in the future.
Great, and I think, John, we're going to spend the rest of our time answering some questions, and I'm sure you've got some there, right?
Oh, we have lots of questions, Nikos. A general question comes from Doug, who asks, what's a good assessment cycle for doing these program assessments? A year, 2 years, 5 years?
Yeah, and that is a good question, and I know we've had a lot of discussion about that. I hate to answer this, but I'm going to say I think it depends. But here's what I can tell you. For levels 5 and 6, I mean, there's not necessarily a magic number, but in general, I think those types of assessments occur more on kind of that 3 to 5 year type of time frame, you know, as you've been able to collect more data so you can actually look and say meaningful things about it. When you're talking about your programmatic data, the way that I know we've approached it is, and programmatic I'm meaning kind of the outcome levels 1 through 4 as we've talked about them, we certainly tend to look at those on an annual basis, but every 5 years as we have to go through the permit renewal process again, we try to take a step back to look at them in a bigger picture sense, to say, okay, we know annually what happened, but, you know, let's look at the last 4 or 5 years to look at some of that variability that we see so that we can refocus things kind of on that 5 year time frame.
You know, and I would just say that you want to, at least at a minimum, step back every year and just at least say, what did I learn this year? Also, as you conduct activities, it's really useful to use your assessments as you're doing them. I know we just did a series of workshops where we looked at the results after each workshop so that we could improve the training itself, and so we were making modifications as we were going. So the other aspect of Karen's it depends on what you're evaluating, what your next steps are.
Yeah, the next question comes from Christy in Virginia, who asks, in regard to wastewater allocations and TMDLs, total maximum daily loads, are the last 3 levels most appropriate for that type of assessment, or can the first 3 levels also be used? And do you have any comments on how this guide can be used, you know, for the TMDL program?
Yeah, and I think that's a good question. When we're looking at stormwater allocations or urban discharge types of waste load allocations, I think that because a lot of times, at least the implementation plans that I've been seeing tend to be BMP-based, you know, that you need to do a series of activities, that certainly applying outcome levels 1 through 4 as appropriate and as they apply to those tasks that have to be completed in those milestones certainly can be utilized. But absolutely right that, you know, levels 5 and 6 are really starting to look at, you know, that particular load and then the impacts on the receiving water. So depending on how the implementation plan is written, I think you could utilize the pyramid very similarly to how we use it for the stormwater programs.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Before we take another question or two, I just want to remind people that this seminar will be archived, so you can access it after today's live webcast. The archive presentation will be posted within a couple of weeks. You can revisit EPA's NPDES training website to view that archive presentation. We posted today's speaker's contact information. Please remember the error we had with Betsy's contact information. You can also find the comprehensive resource list by pressing the resources button on your screen. Finally, a webcast evaluation survey will soon appear on your screen. Please consider completing the survey and let us know your thoughts. We do appreciate your feedback as we work to improve these webcasts. If you don't see the evaluation survey on your screen, please turn off your pop-up blocker. Also, don't forget to download the certificate. Click on the certificate button to print the certificate after this website. We will not mail that to you. If you have multiple people in the room, you can click on the link that will soon be displayed to customize the certificate and print a copy for each person attending. So now we do have time for a couple more questions. Melissa asks, how can a measurable change be observed in receiving waters when you haven't had a baseline established? Betsy or Karen, do you want to comment on that?
Sure, and yeah, I'll jump in, and Betsy, if you have any other thoughts. You clearly, as Betsy was mentioning, you clearly have to look at establishing the baselines and figuring out what do you know now before moving forward. And one of the things that we've talked about with the pyramid is that, in the end, we're looking for changes, changes in awareness, changes in behavior, changes in loads or receiving water quality. But clearly you have to start at some point. So if you don't have an existing baseline, that first time out, that first year out or first few years out may actually be to establish that baseline in which you will then over time, compare that data to. So I think what we don't want to get hung up on is that you're only measuring change. I mean, you clearly that data is useful as a baseline. And then as you move forward, you can use that for comparative purposes.
Okay. Next question comes from Stacy, and she asks if you can give some suggestions on how you would assess if a change in behavior is occurring. Maybe some examples or...
Well, okay, so I think that the one that's probably the hardest is with a public outreach campaign, and some of the add-ons that we were talking about, like tracking the number of people that participate in an event. If you have like you're at a public outreach or a fair or something like that, and you have a booth, make sure that while you're there you ask people a couple of questions. Using coupons, if you can arrange that with your local stores or car washes or something, it's really effective. I know that many years ago the city of Palo Alto would distributed coupons to encourage people to use car washes instead of washing, on their driveways. And they've tracked pretty carefully, how many of those coupons got redeemed, and not only that, but they made the coupons different colors depending on where they distributed the outreach material, so they could track which of those methods had been the most effective for distributing the information. Also using something like a phone number or a website on all your outreach materials and seeing what prompts people to go and get more information. Those are some of the ways. The other thing that we look at for certain things like pesticide use is if you can work out something with your local stores, again, to either do shelf surveys of what's being sold and what they're out of, and also having them give you some sales tracking data. Sometimes you can get that as well. Those are some ways you can do it.
Great. And Betsy and Karen, we've had several questions, so I'll just generalize, but several people are asking again about the costs and level of effort necessary. Can you comment on, maybe the percent of time or percent of effort a municipality should spend versus implementation activities, or maybe through some examples what cities have spent on just the assessment type of activities?
I mean, off the top of my head, tracking costs is a whole nother discussion probably, but there's not costs that I can go to directly for effectiveness assessment. I guess, to me, in a way, if I had to thumbnail it, and I've not put this out before, so it's certainly not a CASCA position, but I guess the way you can kind of look at effectiveness assessment is it should be similar to like a QA/QC program, perhaps. And I know that 10% is kind of a thumbnail of costs, I think, that are used when you're looking at kind of QA/QC. So I'm just putting that out there as some sort of a number. but I think you need that check at the end of the day to really determine, is the $100,000 we're spending or $10,000 we're spending getting us the impact we're looking for? And so I don't know, Betsy, if you have any other thoughts on that.
Well, I actually think 10% is not a bad rule of thumb, but again, it's going to depend a lot on what type of a method that you're using, and some of it is just going to be your staff time and to compile information that you have and to track it, and to organize your data and do those comparisons, and that tends to be a lot lower cost. Generally, if you use an outside consultant to do things like to do surveys, it's going to be a little more expensive. Honestly, I haven't costed out a public outreach survey in a long time, but the number $20,000 comes to mind if you're looking for specific numbers that it can cost to do sort of a county-wide large population type of survey. That's kind of very much off the top of my head and memory from not the recent past.
Before we wrap up, Nikos does have another comment.
On the same thing, and just to kind of echo what Karen and Betsy have said, I think there's sometimes a tendency to want to just jump in and do the stuff and to not set the program up and the tracking up in the right way in the beginning. And we see, even though it does take resources, that we really recommend that MS4s do that kind of work up front, because it is so very, very important over the longer term to really know whether the program is making a difference or not. So whether we're talking about public education or illicit discharge or post-construction, having that kind of baseline information out there that you've put together really before you launch into your activities will then help you really gauge whether you're being effective and then how to adjust the program over time. And the basic philosophy really behind the Phase 2 program is that iterative approach that Karen and Betsy mentioned before. And one of the keys to making an iterative approach successful is really to being able to measure and continually reassess what you've done and where you're going to go next. So I would encourage MS4s not to sort of shortchange this, but to really invest some quality time and thinking into what they're doing.
Great. Thank you, Nikos. And thanks to Karen and Betsy for presenting today. I just want to mention our next Stormwater Webcast is on January 23rd on Stormwater 101, and after about 12 or 14 of these webcasts, we're finally going to tell you what an MS4 is for those of you who are asking.
And by the way, July 23rd, not January.
Sorry, July 23rd. I have it written right in front of me. But we will be presenting basic information about the program elements, requirements, history, and everything about the MPDS program. This will be targeted more for the newer staff, but also for people who want a refresher. So check EPA's MPDS training courses website for more information. That website's epa.gov/NPDES/training. Announcement will also be sent out through MPDS News, so sign up for this email newsletter if you haven't done so already. This ends today's webcast. Thanks for joining us.